Hi Flosstube, welcome to my channel, Stitching with the Waves. I'm Jennifer and this is all about cross stitch, and today I'm going to have a special segment all about Petit Point as well. So let's get into it. Quick update. Since my last video I had the Girl Scout encampment that I was planning. So encampment is a big camping trip for all the Girl Scouts in our area. So we ended up with about 175 people this year. And we had it at a camp here in Northern Virginia where you could do all sorts of fun activities. So the girls got to do archery, canoeing, zip lining, horseback riding, mountain boarding, which is like riding a skateboard down a mountain basically. It was pretty cool. So the girls had a really great time. It was a lot of fun. They earned their space science badges. So we had the local astronomy club come out on Saturday evening and they had some amazing telescopes they brought with them. Unfortunately, it was a little bit cloudy. We did get eventually some stars to come out, so we were able to see, but the girls were just thrilled to be looking through these really cool telescopes. They thought it was just the coolest thing. So it was a lot of fun. It was exhausting because I got very little sleep. I did go zip lining myself with my daughter, my older daughter's troop. Since I am one of the organizers of the whole event, I don't get to spend a ton of time with either one of my troops when I'm out there because I'm busy trying to organize stuff for, for everybody. So I don't get a lot of time, but I was able to go and watch them both do canoeing, and I did get to go ziplining with my older daughter. So that was a lot of fun. It's a great experience to bond with them and to have some experiences with them that I wouldn't otherwise get. So that was great. I'm glad it's done because it's a lot of planning and a lot of work. So when I got back, there's very little sleep at camp, so I was really tired. But it's been a few days, so I've caught up on my sleep, and now I've just got a few things to do to wrap it up, and then we'll start planning for next year because it takes a long time to get prepared for these and get ready for them. So that will get started up here soon, but for right now I'm kind of in a little bit of a lull. So good time to make a video. I didn't get to do a ton of stitching. I do have some to show you, but I didn't do a ton. So we'll get to that in a second. Everybody who commented on my previous video said that this video camera that I have, it's just an old digital video camera, was great for seeing the stitches. It focuses really well. It's hard, like it just has this tiny little screen that's smaller than my phone. So when I'm recording, that's what I'm looking at. So it's hard for me to tell when I was recording how well things were focusing, but when I watched it back on my computer later, it's definitely much better than my phone. I wasn't sure about that because this camera I got it before my daughter was born, so it's over 10 years old. And I wasn't sure about the quality of its recording compared to the quality of my phone, which is only about a year old. So this is definitely better. We're gonna stick with that. So I had two people, Elizabeth Corsini and Julia Gummery, and ask on Flosstube, and I had a few people ask elsewhere on some other social media about what is Petit Point anyway? What do I mean when I say Petit Point? What am I talking about? Is it the type of stitch or the materials I'm using or just the size? What is it? So I thought today I would start off with showing you my Petit Point projects and trying to talk a little bit about what exactly Petit Point means. And that's a really good question. So I did a little bit of reading because I wasn't sure of the exact technical definition of it. And it seems like there's a historical definition and then a more modern definition. And it's not exactly agreed upon about all people, but I'll do my best to explain what I understand about it. I am a beginner. I just want to clarify that right there. I just started my first Petit Point project probably a little bit over a year ago, or right about a year ago. So I don't have a whole lot of experience. I haven't done any large projects, so I don't really know that much. I'm very much learning. And one of the first places as I was trying to learn more about it that I turned to was YouTube. I thought, okay, maybe I can YouTube some videos about how to do it, but there's really not much out there. So I would like to start trying to get some more Petit Point videos out. There's tons of cross stitch, tons of other, you can find stitch tutorials for all sorts of different stitches, finishing tutorials for everything, but there just wasn't a whole lot of Petit Point. And so I'd like to get that information out there. So I'm gonna work on that. This will be the first kind of just what is Petit Point, and I'll show you what I've got. So I pulled out this book I got at my local like library book sale, used book sale. So it's called The Complete Guide to Creative Needlepoint by Joe Butcher. And I have no idea if this is a definitive guide. It's just a book I found at a used book sale. It has got over 300 pages, and the majority of them are stitch diagrams. So my understanding of that needlepoint is 3 basic stitches called tent stitches. And there's 3 variations of how to do the tent stitch. But then there are, I mean, hundreds of other fancy stitches that you could put in the needlepoint to make other fancy stitches. But the basic stitches are these 3 types of tent stitches. Needlepoint's worked on a canvas. There are several different types of canvas. There's mono canvas, and then there's something called Penelope canvas. Penelope canvas, I would say, is a little bit more similar to the difference between stitching. Like Ada would be the mono canvas, and Penelope canvas, it looks different, but it would be a more similar concept to stitching over 2 on even weave or linen. If you're a cross stitcher, you can kind of think about it like that. It's not exactly, but that kind of is how it works. And so the 3 types of tent stitches are half cross, continental, and basket weave. On the front of the fabric, they all look exactly the same. They all look like a half cross. So if you're a cross stitcher, you make that first leg of the X. Up one hole, down the other, you've made the first leg, that's a half cross, that's a tent stitch. And you're just not finishing it, you're not crossing it the other way. So all 3 of those look exactly the same on the front of the fabric. The difference comes in when you look at the reverse side of the fabric. The next hole that you come up in differs. So you end up with a different pattern of the thread carrying across the back in each of the stitches. So in half cross, you end up with vertical lines. So if you're a cross stitcher who, works a whole row of the first leg of X's going one way, and then you come back and cross the leg going the other way on the row, you end up with vertical lines on the back, right? So my understanding is that is what is called a half cross. So you're wasting minimal thread. There's not very much thread being carried across on the back of your fabric. You're minimizing the amount of thread that you use. Okay, continental stitch, you end up carrying further across the back of the fabric, so it provides more coverage. So I have an example here of 40 count linen. I've got to get this to focus. I'll show you the stitching in a few minutes, but I got to get this to focus first on the stitching, and then I can show you the difference in the fabrics. So the linen is over here, the one that's wiggling, because I can't take my hand off to point at it, and then the gauze is the thinner one over here that's wiggling now. Nope, it just focused back on me. Sorry, you guys, this is tricky. Okay, so the linen threads, the individual threads that make up the linen are thicker than the individual threads of silk that make up the silk on the silk gauze. And I'm not sure if you can see that, but if you look at me through the linen, you can see me there, but not very well. But if you look at me, you can really see me well through the silk gauze. The holes are larger on the silk gauze, and the threads are thinner. Now it doesn't want to focus again. We got to get it to focus on the stitching. There we go. So the holes are larger on the silk gauze, and the threads are thinner. And on the linen, the threads are thicker, so the holes are smaller. So when you're stitching on gauze, if you're using the continental stitch that carries across the back of the gauze more, you get better coverage. You can't see through that gauze as well. So that would be the purpose of using the continental stitch. And then the basket weave stitch, instead of working in rows across horizontally or vertically, you're working on a diagonal with basket weave. And the way the thread carries on the back of the fabric, it looks like a basket weave, like the weave of a basket on the back. So that makes for a thicker back, that basket weave. Your final product of stitching is more durable because it's thicker. Okay, so that's needlepoint. Basic needlepoint with just the tent stitches. So Petit Point, the stitches are smaller than they are in needlepoint. And historically, they only use tent continental stitch. You don't use the other two types, the half cross or the basket weave. If you use half cross and basket weave, then it's not considered petit point. You can only use the continental stitch to be considered petit point. Okay. The more modern definition, I would say, is any sort of anything that looks like a half cross or looks like a tent stitch on the front is considered petit point if it's small, if the stitches are small. So one of the things I was reading about is that you can mix the needlepoint tent stitches and the petit point continental tent stitches in the same project if you're using the right type of canvas. So what you end up with it looking like, when I was looking at the picture of it, I kind of likened it to people who stitch the Mirabilia, the women and the fairies. They stitch the dress, the background, all of that stuff in full crosses over two. But when you do the face and the skin, they stitch it over one because it gives finer detail and smoother looking detail in those areas. So similarly in needlepoint, you can use the larger tent stitches on parts of the project. And if you want an area of finer detail, you can use the petit point, the tent continental, over one, which makes smaller stitches to give you more detail. When you mix it like that, then the petit point stitches are called petit point, and the needlepoint stitches are called gross point, G-R-O-S, gross point. So that's the difference in those. Let me see what I did not cover about this that I wanted to talk about. Check my notes. Okay, I think that kind of covers the historical and more modern definitions of petit point. When I'm talking about my petit point projects, I am talking about projects where I'm using the tent continental stitch, like the historical definition, because I'm stitching mainly on the silk gauze. I'm trying to get my projects to be as thin and small as possible because I'm putting them in my miniature house. So I've had a lot of new subscribers lately, and back in video 3, I had put a quick slideshow of my miniature house. It's a 1/12 scale Victorian house, which means that 1 foot in real life is 1 inch in the house. So if I had like a 3-foot long dresser in my real house, in that miniature house, it would only be 3 inches long. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and it's just a quick slideshow. I think it's like less than a minute and a half. So I'm going to insert that here so everybody can see and just review what we're talking about when we talk about a miniature house. Okay, so that was my miniature house, and as you can see, it doesn't have a whole lot of decorations in it yet. So that is something I'm working on. I'm trying to stitch a lot of projects for it to fill it up. Victorians would have had a lot of samplers on the wall. They would have had throw pillows everywhere, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm trying to fill in some of those soft, they did tons of needlework, so filling in some of those soft needlework things that would have been there. So let's talk about scale for a second. Like nowadays, 14 count is a very popular real life size to do, right? 14 count on Aida or 28 count on even weave and linen. That's a really popular size for cross stitch. So if I wanted to miniaturize that and make something that's that size to fit in my house, I would need to multiply by 12. So I take 14 count fabric times 12. That would mean I need to stitch on 168 count gauze. There's no way, I can barely see 40, you guys. There's no way I'm gonna be stitching anything on 168 count. I don't even know if they make that. That's like crazy small. So what I'm trying to do is create the illusion of scale, something that looks like it is to scale, because there's just no way to possibly do that. So I stitch on 40 count right now because that's what I can see. And I believe I did the math. I think it works out to be somewhere between 3 and 4 count if I was working on something in real life. I know they make 10 count fabric. What's it called? Tuba fabric, maybe? I know there's some 10 count fabric out there that's available that is sold. And I know when you see something that's stitched on it, you're like, oh my gosh, the stitches are humongous. So if you can imagine 3 or 4 count fabric, it would be huge. So this is not to scale in the house, but to the naked eye, it's small. The 40 count is small enough that it looks like it could be to scale. It's close enough. It works for my purposes. So one of the things I have to be careful of is that the stitching doesn't get too thick. I don't want to use the basket weave stitch because that adds bulk to the stitching, and that would make the project seem too thick and bulky. So I use the Tent Continental because I'm using that silk gauze where you can really see through it. So I need to have enough coverage of thread on the back that it helps prevent being able to see through it, but it doesn't bulk it up too much that it looks really thick and awkward in the house. Okay, so things that I have stitched. I'm gonna kind of start with, I thought I'd show these to you again since I last showed them in video 3 and I have a lot of new watchers. So this is one of the very first things I started with. Probably need to put paper behind it. Okay, so these are 2 little samplers. I found this swan on Antique Pattern Library, and it was too big to stitch in 40 count and have it, it would have been humongous. It would have been like 2 or 3 inches big. So I needed to scale it down. So I just tried to scale it down and do the best I could. And I stitched the same thing twice. So this is 40 count linen. On the top, it is stitched in Petit Point, and I used 1 strand of DMC to do that. And then on the bottom, oops, I stitched it, gosh, okay, struggling you guys. On the bottom, I used the Gutermann silk thread that comes on the spools. I could buy it at Joann's, and I stitched full crosses. I just wanted to see what the difference was and how it looked when I stitched the 2 different ways. So this was just kind of an experiment, and as you can see, I haven't really done anything with it. Need to figure something out for these of what I'm gonna do with them, but these were really just kind of an experiment to see what I liked and how I wanted to do it. The Gutermann thread is thinner than the DMC, so I can do full crosses. The DMC full cross on 40 count would have been the floss would have been too thick. I would not have been able, it would have just been bulky and would not have stitched well. So then I found another pattern on Antique Pattern Library, and I stitched this on 40 count silk gauze. I just made up my own colors. I think it was stitched into a little hand, like the pattern was intended to be for a handbag, and I thought it might make a good pillow front. I haven't figured out what I'm gonna do for the back of this pillow yet. I think I might stitch another one of these and just switch up the colors. Like the pale pink diamonds that you see there, I might switch and do the darker burgundy color, and put the pale pink where the green is or something like that. I don't know, I haven't figured it out, but I think I might just switch the colors around and stitch it again. So you can see on there, it is, let me try and hold it. If I hold it parallel with the bottom of the camera, there you go. So you can see it's wonky, it's a parallelogram. It is not square. So I hadn't done anything with this because I'm like, oh, it's all kind of lopsided and I don't know what to do. But then I found Frances Peterson's tutorial. She has a shop, Frances Peterson Petit Point, and she sells silk gauze and all kinds of stuff. And on YouTube, she has a tutorial of how to block things that are stitched on silk gauze. So I learned how to do that. I got all the supplies, did it. I've blocked some things, it's worked well. So I need to block this piece and stitch another side and block it. I forgot to mention back in my talk about the different types of stitches, one of the problems with Tent Continental is that you end up, your tension every time you pull through the thread through the fabric, you're always pulling in the same direction. And so it's easy to distort the piece that you're working on, which is fine now that I know how to block. and you're basically using pins. You're pinning your piece down to a piece of foam core and then steaming it, stretching it back to square, steaming it again. So now that I know how to do that, it's all good. Like I said, I'm a beginner. It's a big learning curve. So that piece will eventually get something done with it. Recently I finished this kit from Enginger. It's gonna be a little bolster pillow. So I finished the stitching for it. I have not made it into the bolster pillow yet. I'm gonna get to that soon, hopefully. Okay, so here it is. Last time I showed it, I can't remember if I showed it before. I think last time I showed it, I needed to block it. I hadn't done it yet, but I needed to. So it is pretty square. It is not perfect, but it's pretty darn square, and I think it's gonna be good enough for finishing the pillow. So that's it right there. And I think this one, I want to show you the back. So it's kind of messy there. Let me see if it'll focus up close. So if you look at those top two bands where there's a solid burgundy band and a solid ivory band, see in the ivory how the stitches all slant exactly the same way, where I'm doing long rows of exactly the same color. The stitches just all slant the same direction. That's what provides the coverage on the back that prevents you from being able to see through the finished stitching on the front. Okay, the floss that you carry across the back just provides better coverage. So I'm gonna get that finished up soon. I have a big pile of finishes I need to deal with that I need to get fully finished. Okay, then I have this little pillow I made. This is another pattern. Oh no, sorry, this is not. This pattern was from, let me put this over my face so it focuses on the pillow. Oh, there it goes. So this pattern I found on a French blog, and I'll put the link in the show notes down below. So it's charted. I stitched in ivory and burgundy. Those are the colors in the living room of my house. I wanted it to fit there, to sit on a chair in there. So one side, she has it charted positive and negative. So I have one, just did the reverse on the other side. Oh gosh, it's still trying to get my face, you guys. Okay, there we go. So that's the other side. And then I used the tutorial that Enginger has from that bolster pillow pattern. She has a tutorial for making these little tassels that I put on the corners. So to finish it, you stitch the stitching, and then around the edge of the stitching, on both the front and the back, you put one row of back stitching right around the edge of the stitching. And then you fold the silk gauze in. Let me see if I can get it to focus. I can see the square on my face. It wants to, I gotta hide for a second so it focuses. Come on. Oh, I wanted to show you the edge and now it's not cooperating. Cover up my face with the paper, you guys. See if we can get it to focus here. Maybe if I focus on the big thing and turn. Okay, there we go. So, sorry, learning curve with this camera. So, you just do the back stitching around the edge of the front and back. Then you press the silk gauze into the center and put the two pieces reverse side together, and then just whip stitch down the seams through those back stitches. And that's how you make a nice little, ends up looking like a nice little finished edge there on my very wonky pillow. So this pillow was made before I learned how to do the blocking. Now I do. I have a second one that I'm working on now. I'll show you in a little bit. So it'll get blocked. So it works out okay. You can kind of see it's kind of floppy, right? It kind of bends because it's wonky. But I keep it on this little chair that has arms. This is just a little caned rocking chair. Stop with my focusing on my face. Paper. Did it focus yet? Okay, yes, I think it did. Okay, so I have this little caned rocking chair, and what I do is I just lay the wonky edge of the pillow over, see how it kind of looks like it's laying over the, stop focusing on my face, you guys, this is killing me with the focusing on my face. It looks like that when I lay it correctly, the wonkiness of the pillow looks like it's just kind of flopping over the edge of that chair. So it works out okay that my pillow didn't come out so well. So that one's just fine. And I'm gonna continue to learn and hopefully they'll start coming out a little straighter. All right, I think that is everything I currently have stitched up in Petit Point. And hopefully that clarifies some of what Petit Point is for you. I know it's not the most clear thing, but when I was reading about it, it's not that clear. If you're interested in Petit Point, there's a group on message board group on groups.io called Petit Pointers. I joined about a year ago, and mainly I spent a lot of time lurking because the people on there, their stitching is amazing, and I was kind of shy about posting my wonky little pillows. But I did get brave recently. I created my own photo album. I started posting. Everybody on there is so helpful. I mean, there's a wealth of knowledge on there that I have not found anywhere else on the internet about Petit Point. So if you are really interested in Petit Point, if you have your own miniature house and you want to stitch Petit Point, that is the place to go to get answers and to find out how to do it and what's going on. It's just really, really helpful. So if you have more questions about Petit Point, please post them down below and I'll try to answer as I start to learn more things. If there's specific questions you have about it that you want answered or something about it you'd like to see, let me know. Be happy to show on a future video, whatever I can. But that's kind of the sum total of my knowledge of it at this point. So let's move on. I have a finish, and hold on, my phone locked up, so I need to pull it up here. Okay. So I was finished with the Quakers in France stitch along. It's a mystery stitch along by Tempting Tangles Designs. And I wanted to show you, there's a woman, her name is Jamie Talbot Siegel, and she finished, I gotta get my face out of the way again. Let's see, okay, there it goes, it's focused. She stitched on this hand-dyed fabric, and that is the finished project. As far as I can tell, I believe she stitched in the called for colors. So I just wanted to show you what that looked like because I've only shown my version before. I've done a color conversion to all shades of blue. And I am also finished. So here we go. Get the whole thing in, there we go. I picked my favorite color, blue, in DMC, and I just, it has like 9 different shades of blue in its color family. So I just pulled all of them out and I just stitch along with all those different shades. I did end up picking one of the DMC, it's the variation, I forget what kind it is, variations or Coloris or whatever, but it's the water right here. I ended up using a variegated shade of DMC for that water. And I did end up fussy cutting that floss. I didn't like the darkest shade of blue that was in there with it, so I just stretched all the floss out and cut out those chunks and just stitched with the shades that had like the lighter and the medium tones. There's that. Let me get this big old thing out of the way. And I stitched that on 32 count lamb's wool linen that I just had in my stash. That was pretty much just everything I had in my stash. All right, so moving on, I'm stitching, I have a little Christmas shadow box, a house shadow box that I'm gonna stitch up as a Christmas theme. So I was using designs from The Magic of Christmas to Cross Stitch from Veronique Enginger. I have another finish. I think this is the 5th or 6th little compartment piece I have finished. There it goes. So this little sleigh, and this is being stitched on 32 count antique white Lugana 1/1 with DMC. So I've finished that one. And then I have another project that's a Petit Point that I've been working on. I've been trying to do 30 minutes a day on it. I kind of fell off a little bit with camp and everything. I just, some days I only had 30 minutes to stitch and I just didn't feel like working on something that was so tiny and took so much concentration. So I just worked on something else instead. But I did make some progress on it. I only had a small mount started when I showed you last time. So this is the second pillow from that French blog that I told you about that I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of. I'm just going to post the link in the show notes below. So it's another one of these designs that's a positive and a negative, and I'm stitching it in the same colorway so I can put it like on the other end of the sofa in that room. In the paper, let's see through the gauze. So I'm almost done with the first side. There we go. So it's coming along. I've got the flower done. I just have a tiny bit of the border done. And I think I'm all done with the ivory. I think I just have to go back in and finish that burgundy and then I'm done, if I remember correctly. So that one's coming along quickly. Hopefully one more day of stitching on that and it'll be finished. All right, then I think last time at the end of the video I said something about focusing on dwindling down my whips and, you know, minimizing what I had because I have a lot and I want to get them dwindled down. I have 3 new starts. Busy with camp. Spent so much time out at camp, had, you know, like multiple days where I didn't stitch at all, trying to get everything packed up, trying to get everything out there, trying to get everything unpacked after we got home. And yet I still have 3 new starts. What is wrong with me? Okay. Anyway, at least I had a finish. At least I finished that Quakers in France because I started not 1, but 2 new sets. So I had told you last time at the end of the video, I was starting the Stitching Book Club from Sapphire Mountain Handcrafts. She designed a sampler around Pride and Prejudice. So we're both stitching a Pride and Prejudice piece and reading the book. And if you want to join that, it's Stitching Book Club on Instagram. I'll put the link below. So this is 40 count ivory linen with DMC. And this is my start on the mystery Sal. It's coming out super cute. I did do color changes. Her flowers that are here that are blue, hers were more of a pinkish red color. So I've changed mine to blue. I am using some pinkish red as just a little accent in some places, but I am changing mine to have more blues in it. And then the second Sal. So Kristen had some from Sapphire Mountain Handcrafts had some questions about that full-size Sal. Some people who love Pride and Prejudice and saw the book club but had never cross-stitched before and said, would this be a good way to learn how to cross-stitch? Could I stitch that? So she ended up designing a smaller version of the pattern for the people who wanted to learn how to cross-stitch, so that it would just be a much smaller, more manageable piece for them to learn on. I got this little bug in my head at one point. I bet that would be the perfect size to stitch in Petit Point and possibly even hang on a wall in my house, my little miniature house. I resisted, you guys. I think I made it a full week, maybe even a week and a few days after the Sal started, before I caved in and purchased it. But I did at least have that one completely done. So I'm stitching it on 40 count silk gauze with 1 strand of DMC. And I am stitching this one in the called for colors because those pinks and reds are going to go really well with the color scheme of my house. So this is part 1. It's the bottom. And it's probably a little hard to tell. I have such a small screen I'm looking at. I conservatively filled in the background around the stitching. I didn't want to fill in too much of the background because I'm not, it's a mystery Sal, so I'm not sure where the other, next sections will be and how close the other pieces will come to this. So I tried to be real conservative about it because I don't want to have to rip anything out. So that is, those are 2 of my new starts. Those are my 2 new Sals. So they will both be over, they run about 3 months. There's a part released in September, October, and November. So my plan is to keep up with it. I need to get some more stitching done on the main Sal, but I do have that mini Sal finished. And then my 3rd new start is Eiffel Quaker by Jardin Privé. And this is a piece that I am doing for my daughter. So this is what it looks like as she charted it. I have changed out some of those motifs to personalize it for some things that my daughter likes. But she has loved the Eiffel Tower since she was in preschool and learned all about the sculptor and all that stuff. So I started off with that big Eiffel Tower and I am changing it. It is charted in like beiges kind of colors and I'm changing it to blue and aqua to go in her bedroom. So I have the tower almost done. There's a little bit more aqua to go in there and then I have a bird to go on top. But I'm loving that. I'm loving how it's coming out. It's fun to stitch. It's, well, sorry, I forgot to say what it is. It's 20 count antique white Monaco, and I'm doing it 1/1 with DMC. So there's a lot. We are almost done, you guys. I have a little bit of haul. I joined the Floss Fix from Fat Quarter Shop. They are doing a Classic Colorworks Floss Club each month. I believe it's currently sold out. I did not get the first month. The first month were all shades of pink. These shades this month are called Jungle Green. So each month when she orders the floss for the club, you know, the first month she just ordered however much for the pinks and sold out of them. So when she ordered the greens, she ordered more and opened the club up again. And that's when I joined. And she said, they're sold out right now, but when she orders for next month, they're gonna order even more and she'll open the club back up. So if you're interested in joining, you can do that. I just felt like it was a really great price. I got 6 shades of green. Keep losing my piece of paper. Okay, I got 6 shades of green. And they're really pretty. These are gonna be great to just start having a collection of overdyed flosses, because I'm getting more and more patterns where I want to be able to just sub out 1 or 2 of the colors and use the rest in DMC, and I would love to just kind of have a collection. So when I looked, I really liked how she's doing the club, where you get 6 different shades on some sort of color theme each month. And so unfortunately, the only part, I wish the blues were earlier. I feel like the blues are like towards the end of the year, so it's going to be a little while for me to get the blues. But I'm excited to start getting a collection. So a year from now, I should have a decent collection of these. And I might go look up what pinks she had in the first month and just go order those 6, just so I have a full set, even though I wouldn't be getting, you know, it as part of the club. All right. I think that might pretty much be it. Yeah, plans. All right, so my plans are to make sure I stay caught up on the Stitching Book Club pieces. I've got to do that before October 8th. I need to focus on my Christmas pieces because Christmas is going to start coming up fast. The fall is just busy with sports and all sorts of school stuff and volunteer stuff. So I really need to focus on the Christmas pieces that I am stitching and have close, but not quite there yet. I'd like to get as many of them done for this year as I can. And then I have a big pile of things that I need to FFO. I have quite a few things and I have bought the supplies. I have them all. It's just been too busy. So I just need to get a day or two where I can spread my big mess out on the dining room table and just spend the day FFOing stuff. So I'm hoping to have that sometime in the next couple of weeks. Because one of the pieces is my autumn piece, and it's to when I don't know exactly the precise first day of autumn. Did it already happen? If so, then I missed it. But I really want to get that autumn piece finished so I can put it up. I still have summer up. So I'm going to work on that. And hopefully by the next video, I will have that completely finished, ready to show you. Thank you everybody for stopping by, for watching. A lot of people have been giving me shout outs, which I really appreciate. A lot of people have been commenting and saying how much they like my videos, which is just a lot of fun to hear from you guys and to know that you're out there and you're watching and you like it. I really appreciate all of the love from everybody out there that leaves nice comments and shares something about themselves. So I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope you're having a great day. I do have a few pictures from camp this weekend that just have my kids in them, or more generic pictures of the area and what was going on out there. So I'm going to put these here at the end of the video in case you want to check those out. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Oh.